Hello. Emilia Bassano was born on the eastern edge of the city in 1569. She was the daughter of Baptiste Bassano, a migrant musician who travelled from Venice in order to play at the court of Queen Elizabeth I. And that's very much a world that the young Emilia grew up with, a world of etiquette, good manners and courtly behaviour. And she must have been a charming child, because when her father dies in 1576, she's taken under the wing of Susan Bertie, the Countess of Kent. Susan Bertie is an influential woman with new ideas. She believes that women should be educated, and as a result, the young Emilia receives lessons in not only religion, but also philosophy and literature and history. Emilia continues to move from aristocratic household to aristocratic household. Whilst in her teens, she spends a time with Margaret Clifford, the Countess of Cumberland, and her family, who are very famous for their fine library. And by the time Emilia is 18, she's a self-possessed, witty, educated young woman with the trappings of a class to which she doesn't belong. That same year, her mother dies and she finds herself in a difficult situation. Her answer is to take a well-trodden route, and she becomes the mistress of a rich and powerful man. Henry Carew is not only Elizabeth I's first cousin, the nephew of Anne Boleyn, but he's also the Lord Chamberlain of the country, the man responsible for the courts and the law. He's also a whole 45 years older than Emilia. And whilst this may seem a little bit off-colour to us, she was quite happy with the situation. Not only was she kept in some luxury, but she later reflected that he'd not only been very affectionate, but he treated her with respect. Emilia must have therefore been disappointed when this arrangement perhaps inevitably came to an end, because in 1592 she fell pregnant. She was hurriedly married off to a distant cousin, Alfonso Lanier, who was also, like her father, a musician at the court of Elizabeth I. And at this point, Emilia does risk becoming a footnote in the histories of great men. Now, I say that because over recent years, it's been suggested that Emilia Bassano might in fact have been the Dark Lady, the mysterious woman who inspired William Shakespeare to write some of his finest sonnets. Well, what's the evidence for this? Emilia's father was Venetian. Her colouring probably was dark, brown hair, dark brown eyes. And she probably did know Shakespeare. 2 years after her marriage, her former lover, Henry Carew, forms his own troupe of actors, hiring one William Shakespeare as its manager. And during the early years of her marriage, Shakespeare and his troupe are based at the Curtain Theatre, literally just up the road from her family home. And don't forget, her husband was a musician. She would have been mixing with people who were performers. And what's the evidence for this in Shakespeare's work? Well, people often point out that in The Merchant of Venice, which is written, of course, about Emilia's father's hometown, one of the major protagonists is called Bassanio. And then, in Othello, an important female character is called Emilia. Well, the simple fact of the matter is this is conjecture. We can't know for sure. But what we do know for sure about Emilia Bassano Lanier is during the years of her not entirely happy marriage, she is writing poetry. Now, it's not unusual for an educated Tudor woman to write a poem. But Emilia's different. She wants people to read her poems. And we find her in 1610, when she's in her early 40s, travelling across to the other side of town, to Stationers' Hall, the home of the Stationers' Company, to register her authorship of her poetry. She's able to do that, but the big challenge is getting her poems published, especially as a woman. Here Emilia draws on decades of relationships with the rich and the powerful. She dedicates every single one of the poems in her volume to a powerful female patron, starting at the very top with Queen Elizabeth I herself. In 1611, her book of poetry is published, the first volume of poems published in this country by a woman author. The volume is called Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, or Hail Christ, King of the Jews. And yes, it's a volume of religious poetry. But there's something subversive and faintly satirical about it. To start with, Emilia looks at the life of Christ through the eyes of female protagonists, such as the wife of Pontius Pilate. She suggests, for example, that since Adam is the superior of the couple, surely Eve can't be entirely to blame for the fall of man. And throughout the poetry, there's an inference that the virtues, the Christian virtues of women, should be held in the same esteem as those Christian virtues usually ascribed to men. Now, I'd like to say to you that this remarkable volume of poems made her rich or even made her famous, but this didn't happen. She did live a long life. She died when she was 76 in 1645, and we know she had a pension, so she was comfortable. But she still risked really continuing in obscurity until 2018, when the hit play Emilia appeared in the West End. It's based loosely on Emilia Bassano's life. It uses her life to highlight issues of being foreign, of race, of making your voice heard when you're a woman, and imagines what her relationship with William Shakespeare might have been. It's hugely entertaining, but for me the important thing is it takes our dark lady of the City of London and it puts her back into the light, because reading about her life, it seems to have been a struggle to make her voice heard. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. Goodbye.